Alright, Harri's alternate stride is here, along with a new Blitz Order generic, so let's begin. So first off to the new Blitz Order generic, which all do the same thing, but I'm going to go over the Dragon Empire one, which all of them are going to have the same skills. So the first skill is that count. You may only have 2 copies of it in a deck, which can be fine considering that it's a Blitz Order, but anyway, the main skill that they're all going to share is that if your Vanguard's grade is less than your opponent's Vanguard, aka if you win second, or your opponent's Vanguard is on stride, or even playing grade 4s, you can play this card ignoring the grade. So you remove this card and then choose one of your units being attacked. It gets plus 15k power into the end of the battle, and then perform all the following. First off, if you went second and you did not put a Persona Shield ticket to your hand by a copy of this, put a Persona Shield ticket to your hand, and then until the end turn, you can play an additional order that is the Persona Shield ticket. And the second section is that if your opponent personalizes during turn, choose one of your units being attacked, it gets plus 5k power in the battle. And here's the other cards that share the same ability, except for Lyrical, because Lyrical is ignored here. But basically, it's a 15k shield by default, with additional abilities depending on the turn. Like if you went second, you can play this card regardless of grade, or even if your opponent is playing strides. But speaking of going second, you also get a Persona Shield ticket, which in a way is more shield than the other part, or Persona Right Turn. But regardless, these are interesting techs depending on the deck. And now to the Harri support, starting with Jazzy Juggler, which is a grade 3 30 power, and the skill is auto. When discarded from hand during your ride phase, while you have a Harri crest, you may put this card to soul. And yes, you can do this while you are going to grade 0 to grade 1, as you could get the crest first and then put this to soul. With the second skill word count, if you have a Harri crest, you get all the following. Auto soul when your Vanguard is being attacked. If you did not call a copy of this card to Guardian this turn, you may put this card to Guardian. With the second skill word count Guardian, shield plus 10k. It's a discard fodder that can put itself to soul, which could call itself from soul for some extra 10k shield. In a way, it does remind me of the Blitz Order that could actually activate from soul, but it costs energy blast 3, but it's a 15k shield instead. But this one does have some applications, for 1 being a unit, and 2, this one doesn't go back to the bottom of the deck unlike the Blitz Order. And also it's still a grade 3 that can activate itself from the early game as a discard fodder, or even as stride, which is also pretty huge. But still, I'm not too sure how many to run of these, just because you might have better cards to use. And then we go to Spike Wildmaster Fresh Hit, which is grade 2 with 10k power, and the skill is auto. When placed on rearguard while you have a Harri crest, you can either counterblast 1 or put a card from your hand to soul to draw a card, which is definitely very helpful, especially in the early game, because 1, it sets up your soul, or 2, you could just use it just straight up for an early game draw, even if it does cost you a counterblast. But most importantly, the setup for soul in the early game, in which the second skill is count rearguard while you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Harri. It gets the boost ability, which could be a nice 10k boost here, especially if you don't run too many grade 1s for the deck, since Harri is kind of flexible. With the last skill being the Magia ability, where auto rearguard at the end of battle this unit attacked. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Harri and you did not call a card during the battle phase this turn, cost energy blast 3, put this to soul, and then choose a unit card with a different name from this one from soul and call it to rearguard, and at the end of turn, put that unit back to soul. This is basically the same thing as the grade 3 stride fodder, except that this one uses energy instead of counterblast, which is actually a huge difference. Counterblast is kind of very lacking for the deck, that having an alternate option is just very nice, especially since the deck doesn't really even use energy at all. Now, I'm not going to say this is going to completely replace the grade 3, because the grade 3 is still searchable just because of being a grade 3, but this is a very nice alternate option, especially just for energy usage and also early game reasons as well, and being acted as a booster. So this card will definitely be ran. And now finally to our new alternate stride, Parallel Megatrick Fairfield, which has the generic stride stats and condition. With the Magia skill, act Vanguard once per turn, cost Soul Blast up to 2 cards, and then turn a copy of itself from the G-Zone face up, and then choose the same number of units with different names equal to the number of used Soul Blasts, and call them to rearguard, and then they get plus 5k power in a turn, and then perform all the following. If your G-Zone has at least 3 face-up cards in the G-Zone, choose a unit called by this ability, it gets plus 10k power and 1 crit into the end turn, and then at the end of turn, put all units called by this ability into soul. So once again, it's another alternate first stride that you can use, and it's definitely better than the original first stride, but at the same time, it really just depends on how you fill up your soul, especially in the early game. Because J-Dragon at least lets you set up your soul even further, and then lets you just call one thing, while this one already requires setup before you do the call. But you can call 1 extra unit, which could be pretty nice, and also, I like the fact that this card gets a bonus while you're on second stride, which is something I really wish that Night Rose got. Even though this is not giving a 4th attacker, you do have support that give 4th attack, so it is understandable. But another huge thing is that, once again, this card doesn't cost counterblast, which could be very nice in case you need an alternate better stride than the Jade Dragon, because the deck is pretty counterblast heavy and there's not really much ways to countercharge. And also, you might not be able to stride into the Harri stride all the time, which is also makes this a better alternate stride just in case you need it. So overall, pretty nice alternate stride depending on situation. And then next week we got some Grand Grace support, which I'm still hoping for some Skyride stuff here. And so that's it for the new encounter stride for Harri, along with the Blitz Order generics. What do you guys think of it? Blitz Order generics is just whatever, it just depends on you and the deck, but they can be decent option, especially if you're playing Stokeo. And if they do make one for Lyrical as well, it could be good for Lyrical decks. But as for the new Harri support is actually pretty nice. A new grade 3 discard fodder that could technically recycle itself as well, just because you got support to let you do that. A new alternate way to use energy, because the deck doesn't really use energy, and also a decent alternate stride, which really depends on scenario, but it's nice that it doesn't use counterblast and it's better than the first stride. So overall, it's just cool support. But other than that, that's it for this, and see you next time.